Thanks for tuning in to the Product-Led Festival. We really hope you're enjoying the festival so far, because we've got even more insights heading your way. All sessions are designed to be interactive and give you the chance to engage with our speakers, so come ready to get involved with your questions and comments. For all things product-led growth, don't forget to check out the Product-Led Alliance memberships at productledalliance.com. Sit back and enjoy the next session.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Product-Led Festival. It's been another awesome day so far of insights, really fantastic, and we've got an even more fantastic panel session up next for you on how to set up your relationship with design and engineering for success. Please remember to drop any questions you have into the chat. Of course, our panelists will get to these, but it gives me great pleasure to introduce our moderator for the session, Tia Ying, who is the Chief Product Officer at Bellhop. And I'll let you take things away.
Thank you, Adam. So great to be here. A little bit about myself first. I keep telling people that as I grow older, the company I work for become younger in time. Because in my earlier career, I learned product management and grew my initial career at GE and Sears. So collectively, there's like 250 years of age between the companies. Then I spent 6 years at Groupon, which when I joined was a newly IPO'd company. So as the company continued to mature, I also had the opportunity to grow my career further. So all the way to the head of product for goods, which was Groupon's e-commerce business. So by the time I left, it was 40% of Groupon's revenue. Of course, during pandemic, it was 80%, right? So at the beginning of 2020, I jumped into the startup world. So Bellhop, who I work for at this moment, is the second startup I have been leading the product function of. So it's a Series C company modernizing the movie industry. The company headquarters is in Tennessee, but I work from home, like everybody virtually here. So I live in the suburban area of Chicago, and I visit the office about once a month. So about the topic today, a lot of times we say a product manager is the CEO of the product, right? So being the CEO means that you are accountable, but you are not trying to do everything by yourself, and you are not always right. So you really need to maximize the result by leading a team through influence. So today we'll be talking to a panel of strong product leaders with diversified experiences. We'll be getting their perspectives on partnering with design and engineering for success. Let's start with the intros. Yeah, Nayeli, if you want to start.
Sure, I'll start. My name's Nayeli, and I work for Zello. I'm a product director there, and we do push to talk / like a voice communications platform, and I've been there for a long time. I actually went to school at UT, got an engineering degree, and I started here for my first job. So I have a very different story from Jing, because I actually really have grown into the same company and kind of gotten a lot of my learnings from outside of the company, because I was actually the first product manager there. So it's been a really good learning experience for me, but there's so much to learn from really the outside of the company in my case.
That's awesome. Yeah, so Sid, if you want to turn on your camera and go next.
Hi everyone, my name is Sid Dar. I'm a senior product manager at a company called InnoWatts. We are Series B energy tech startup. So we work with companies within the energy value chain and help them extract value out of their data. I am a product of the cultural phenomenon known as the Great Resignation. I worked in my previous company for almost 15 plus years, and then decided that I wanted to branch out and move to a startup where I could have a little bit more of an impact, still within the energy industry. About myself, I do have an engineering background. Needless to say, you don't need to have an engineering background to be a successful product manager. And that's one of the things that we'll touch upon in our conversation today.
Yeah, great to have you here as well. Thank you. Adam, if you want to turn on your camera, introduce yourself as well.
Afternoon, everyone. Hi, I'm Adam Johnston. So I'm Senior Product Manager at Superscript. Superscript is an insurtech scale-up that provides digital-first subscription-based insurance for SMEs. And I joined about 14 months ago. I lead our growth product team here, focusing on acquisition strategies, and I work closely with a cross-functional team across the business of marketing, design, tech, and partnerships. Previously, I've worked for a couple of really large London-based businesses, Reed and Tesco, and then also a couple of scale-ups as well prior to that. So I've worked in a variety of environments. And teams that are both, co-located and distributed, which I think was helpful for when we made the transition to home working. But I'm really just keen to have a good discussion about, what I've learned over the years about what works well for forming good teams and good relationships.
Awesome, thank you. So last but definitely not least, Charlie, if you want to also introduce yourself.
Hi, yeah, final square on the Brady Bunch popping up here. My name's Charlie. I'm the head of product here at Dojo. Dojo are a payments services company. We provide award-winning payment services for merchants across the UK. Here I'm heading up the payments tribe, and our mission is enabling massive multinational end-to-end payment success. And it's I've been here for about a year now. It's been a massive story of growth for us this year. We've transitioned into this tribe model, which has been with challenges, but it's a very beneficial model for us now. I started my product career at a small software house on a grad style scheme, which is quite rare for products actually, in a software house called Piriform. I did a shorter stint in ad tech, working in a data science, data engineering function, and then I broke into fintech, working for Nutmeg in the payments squad there. And a year ago, I joined Dojo, and it's been onwards and upwards ever since. So yeah, it's great to meet all of you again.
Yeah, nice. Great to have all of you here. So like I mentioned, we have a very strong panel today. So looking forward to getting their inputs. So I'm going to kickstart the conversation with a few questions that I have. Would love to get their perspective on. But like Adam mentioned at the beginning, we would love to get live questions from the audience as well. So please do post your questions as you have them, and we do our best to address as they come through as well. So before we jump into some of the details, let's actually start with the principles, right? So I'd love to have the panel talk about what are the principles that you would define as you build a relationship with your partners. Let's start with Charlie.
Yeah, I would say principles, really it's about empathy and transparency. I think that success in building this relationship to begin with is all about understanding context. I've seen some sort of not good examples of where people have tried to start that relationship with frameworks, or with going a bit gung-ho and trying to really instill different ways of working and change before actually understanding context that they are coming into. And the way that can be really enabled is just by being transparent. You're joining a team, you're learning about people's experience, you're learning about their expertise, and you're coming to help. You're coming from the same place. You're really looking to drive the company mission forwards. You're not there to upset, not all the time anyway, although that can happen occasionally as product people. But really starting with empathy, continuing with transparency, and overall just communicating through the beginning and throughout the relationship is super important. You can never do it enough, communication, really. If someone is saying you're communicating too much, that's a pretty happy problem to have, I think.
Yeah, 100% on that transparency, authenticity. Does anyone else want to jump in? Adam, do you want to talk about yours as well?
Yeah, I think I often find myself in situations where you're in a period of change, whether that be you've joined a new team or you've got new team members, and so something that I try to practice a lot, and it is connected to the point that Charlie made, is repetition of what are we trying to do. who is the customer or customers that you're trying to serve and deliver value for, and what's the plan? How is it, a very, very top line, but making sure that is shared regularly, particularly in times of change. Because if you are part of it doesn't matter whether it's a startup or a larger business, there'll always be some form of change going on, and you need to just be aware, I guess, of the fact that while you as a PM are constantly living these goals, the goals that you've set and the customer needs, that isn't everyone's focus constantly when they're executing, and they do need a helpful reminder. I think that's a big part of our role here.
Yeah, change is the norm, right? So, and I do think how effective a team is not defined by smooth times, it's defined by time of change, time of challenges. So, well said. Nayeli or Siddharth, is there anything you want to add as well?
So yeah, absolutely agree with what's been said so far in terms of being, empathy, building authentic relationships, transparency. Maybe a couple of things I would add is I think it's really important to have the team aligned because there's so many different teams, and product management really sort of sits in the middle of across these different teams, right? I always define it as we sort of in the middle of engineering, sales, customer, and execs, and finding the balance between all of these. And part of that is, being able to define where we want to go, what the target state is, and sort of aligning everyone to kind of move in that direction. And maybe another thing to sort of call out here is at times product team are the people doing all the communication. So it may come across as we are trying to steal the limelight, but that's not the case. So do give recognition where it's due. And sometimes I've had this conversation with my VP of engineering, where I felt like I wasn't doing justice to some of the work that his team was doing, especially the back-end infrastructure work. So I called upon him to give the update so there's a voice and face attached to him. So give recognition and allow them to sort of, be on the pedestal as well. It's not like the product is doing all the work. We're helping align all the teams to deliver a product, all working together.
Exactly. Yeah, Nayeli, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think everyone covered most important principles, but I would say just kind of representing what we're doing as a partnership. That's what I like to start out with. It's not me kind of defining things, it's all of us defining things together. And so for me, that's been something that I definitely, I come from a company that is in growth constantly as well. And we started with 7 of us when we had 4 engineers, literally. And now there's over 50 of us. And so basically from me approaching everyone saying like, you're just as important as every single person, right? Usually we have like the designer, the data person, and the engineer, and we're all leads in our own expertise areas. And so I basically frame it as like, we can't do this without each other. So just having that kind of camaraderie, starting any sort of project is really important so that everybody feels involved, they feel important, and they are important. So that's what I would add to that.
Yeah, that sincerity really as a team is awesome. So yeah, these are all really great principles. So now let's jump into more detailed examples. Let's first just think back, way back in time, right? Because all of you have been pretty advanced in product career, but there's always a starting point. So if you think back about when you first started on the journey of product management, and then I definitely remember the time when I was new, but I was super competitive. I really want everyone to say I was the best PM ever. So that guides a lot of my actions, which looking back is interesting. At that point, of course, when you start, majority of the collaborators had way more experience than you did, right? So I remember that I was working with a team of engineers that actually helped Walmart build their initial e-commerce platform. So they are very experienced. And then you want to, of course, lead the team and help the team to succeed, but also you are very self-conscious at that time. So can you guys share an example of what you did first to start establishing the trust? Or it could be on the flip side. What do you think you did wrong, or examples of things that you would advise the new PMs to not do? Let's start with Adam.
Thank you. Look, my first role, I remember I moved to London. I worked for a small fintech startup called Totally Money, and they had big plans, and so I was really their first PM, and I think it was a mistake that I made, which was probably keeping my head down too much and not actually sharing the plans, the ideas early enough. It was a young company, and it's not like people weren't friendly, but the idea of sharing something that's not an idea, that's not fully formed, it's quite scary, I think, and so it takes a bit of confidence to then go and present something. In fact, it doesn't. In my view now, you don't need to present anything. You just need to go and have a conversation with your team and the relevant people to share an idea, and essentially my view now is you always need to listen to feedback from people with different skill sets and different perspectives, and by doing so you unearth assumptions, and you can iterate on the idea, because it's not basically plans are never it should never just be written once, and more so you're going to get much better trust built within the team if you involve them early on, and that they see that their contributions are reflected in that plan. And I definitely kind of learnt the hard way in that respect.
That's great learning. And the same thing, I remember myself being really big on docs in the initial phase, but docs are living documents, right? So I think it's you don't have to spend too much time to perfect everything at the beginning before engaging the team. So on that note, Nayeli, I know you have something to share as well.
Yeah, I'd say I have also like a mistake. I guess we all learn through that. But to start with, I do think how I started building trust, I started working with the founders. And so not only were they very knowledgeable of the product they created, but I mean, they loved their product and they were very heavily attached, and they still are. And so one of the things I learned, at least from my end, was to build trust, I really had to be genuinely curious about everything. And so asking questions was something that I think got me very far at the beginning, because I did do, of course, my own, and we all go into new products like doing our own research and working with it and really getting to know ins and outs. But there's a limit to what we can learn on our own, and really getting to talk to the people that have been there for a long time and using them as resources to really understand why something is built the way it is, or anything that they know, kind of helped them see that I was genuinely interested in what we were doing as a team. And I think a mistake that I also learned, and something that maybe, I don't know if many of you do it, but something that's easy to do is when you come into something that's been established and you're not part of it, you can look at a product and see and think maybe, it doesn't make sense that this was implemented this way. And how you approach that conversation has to be extremely tactful, because now that I've been here for a long time, I know that when a product is created, there are so many trade-offs and constraints, and you're dealing with timelines, you're dealing with customers, you're dealing with money. Some of the features you're building have to be implemented, because when you're a young startup, it might make you or break you. Like, it means cash in the bank or the company going down and burning, right? So it's easy, like later on, and I've seen it with younger PMs, right, as they come in, this doesn't make sense. And of course, the people that worked on this for a long time are like, well, you don't know what happened, you don't know what we had to go through to even get to the point where you don't have to worry about the company burning down the next day. So I've definitely had my shared I've learned to really come from a place where you ask, again, questions have been really important. You ask the background of things and you empathize with how things are made, because just because something's not made as great as you think it could be doesn't mean that people didn't even think through those things, right? They did think through it, but nope, we've got to get this out or the customer is out the door. So yeah, that was really important for me. A really good lesson.
Yeah, that's a great lesson as well. And I think it's definitely true that product management is continuously making that trade-off call between time to market and the desire to have a perfect product. So everything has a reason, has a backing. Now it's not to jump into really conclusion or judgment is important, although you still want to challenge the status quo, right? So it's a good balance to have. So I know we actually touched on this early on as well. And 10, 15 years ago, if you look at product managers, most of them have a very clear journey. It's you start on engineering and then you get an MBA, you become product manager. But nowadays, there's more and more diverse background being appreciated in product management, right? So I think more specifically for people who come from not a technology-based background, any skill set that you would recommend for them to gain in especially building effective partnerships with design and engineering, especially talking in the same language with a technology team when you don't have necessarily that technology background, right? So love to get your take on that as well. Let's start with Siddha, if you want to start with that.
I think it's a very relevant question in today's days and age, because we obviously see a lot of people with various backgrounds. And when you sort of take that context into consideration, that we're supposed to influence without authority, or that we are the CEO, as many people reference to as a mini CEO who's not on top of the food chain, right? So how do you sort of influence, how do you sort of gain their trust? I think that's a really important skill that any product manager has to learn, has to build. It's because it is really comes down to the leadership that you provide across those three different areas, right? I think for somebody who's sort of coming in from a non-technical background, just putting in the effort to learn, because as Nayeli also mentioned, everyone is an SME in their own right, in their own field, right? They worked hard, they know what they're doing, and so you need to sort of earn their trust and respect. Right. What I would advise you not to do is go into a conversation and be like, well, I know how this is done, and what you're doing is wrong. That's not a way to sort of go about that kind of conversation. You need to understand the context. You need to understand, where they're coming from, building those empathy skills, putting in the effort to understand a bit more of the technical constraints, right? For example, it's really hard to design a system where you can get a perfect cost, performance, and quality. It's very hard to get those three parameters to align, and being able to understand, hey, what is it that you value? What is it that makes most sense for your product, right? I know a lot of people in this area who don't have a technical background, who've maybe even taken some classes, maybe a programming class, to kind of understand how that works. So there are a lot of online resources nowadays available to come up to speed. And lastly, I think in terms of sort of how you interact, as product managers, the thing that we do on a daily basis is make trade-off decisions. Like, how do you make trade-offs? And maybe use that same framework when talking to an engineering team, so they can also kind of come back to you and respond to you in a framework that makes sense to you. So this is my option A, option B, option C. Option A is my hacky solution that I can get it done within the next day or two, or within in maybe next few days. Option C is my Nirvana target stage. It'll take me multiple sprints to get there. And option B is somewhere in the middle, right, where you can understand. And coming in from a non-technical background, I think it'll make it easier for you to understand, what are the constraints and what is actually achievable.
Yeah, makes total sense. I love what you said. It's not just sharing what to do, but also sharing that framework, sharing your thought process. That goes a long way as well. So I'd love to invite Charlie to share your input on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, we were just talking a little bit about questions and asking questions. Definitely don't ask questions like, "Can you please tell me why this is crap?" Like, you need to lead with a bit of lead with that empathy, lead with that curiosity. I think particularly if you are coming from a background that is less technical or not technical at all, no one's expecting you to know exactly how database X plugs into system Y. No one's expecting you to know that as a product manager, as a product designer. If you can really come from a place of authenticity and say, I don't fully understand how this works, but I need you to help me to understand the context of what this is doing, how we got here as a business, so that I can carve out or play my part in carving out a path forwards for us. I think coming from that position of really strong communication, it's empathy, it's transparency, it's it's everything that we've discussed here today, the curiosity too, that's really going to drive success for people who don't have an as technical background.
Yeah, very well said. And I love the keyword of curiosity. That goes a long way as well.
Yeah.
So now let's talk a little bit more about working and building and facilitating that team, right? So overall, how do you measure the team's effectiveness, right? Because as a product manager, I tend to think about a lot of things as a product. So you can think about the team as a product you design as well. If you want to design the team as a product, what is your hero metric, right? And what does a successful team look like? Let's start with Adam here.
You know, it's a funny thing to say. What's the metric of an effective team? Because I guess we're talking about people, the people that we work with every day. And actually, I do know that within product and any business, you do need to be able to know that you're contributing to the success of the business. But in terms of how I frame things for myself as working with tech and design and other contributors within the team, I'm actually thinking about what are the signals, I guess, that indicate a team as being effective, and by signal I really mean behaviors. And I look at this in two ways. One is customer focus. That is that while that's my role, I really want other team members to exhibit this as well. And so I look for signals like, do they connect their work with the customer or the user of the product? Do they care about the experience, like with their work? If a developer is coming to you and raising questions about performance of their work, like performance impact on the customer or the user experience, that's great. The second area is the team happy? And this is multifaceted, but I guess a team should be hopefully continually improving and aiming to improve. That's a sign of a happy team. Turning up to their stand-up on time, feeling comfortable to even challenge each other about certain things on topics, and even do they feel that they are effective? I think that's quite important. Now, in terms of actual metrics, I actually run a mini health check with my teams every now and again. No more than every 3 months. It's normally 5 or 6 questions, and I often mix it up quite a bit. So it's a very effective way to show that you are listening to the team, and actually it's also helpful, separate from all of your retros and things, to actually understand, do the team always feel connected to the customer, and are they happy? So that I find that really important.
That's a great approach. Can you share a few questions there?
I'd be very happy to. Yeah.
And then I think it would be very great to talk about it from Siddha as well.
I think Adam covered a lot of the points that I was planning on touching on this. I think the goal really is to have a strong collaborative relationship between product and engineering and design, right? I think that is the goal, at least in this organization, and I think in my previous experiences as well. I feel like if there is a strong collaborative relationship where we have a vision and we have the customer in mind, I think that is what can make a product successful, right? Now, there are obviously a number of ways you can measure it. Some of them being, are you shipping things on time and so on? Those are your OKRs and KPIs. But I also think sort of other sort of subtle things, does the team have a safe space to express their concerns, right? Are they able to express that without having to feel that there will be some sort of retaliation or whatnot, right? So being able to provide that safe space to them, I think that's really important. Obviously you can do a lot of surveys to see as well what the engagement scores are, the employee satisfaction score and whatnot. But as Adam mentioned, sometimes it's just a feel that you get, right? There sometimes may not be some direct metrics, but more sort of indirect ones, which you just sort of have to feel when you're talking with the team. You can kind of feel their energy to see how things are going.
Yeah, that's a great point. And both of you mentioned basically that the happiness and then the feeling of safety which is actually harder to achieve now that we are in a more of a remote setting. Of course, even before pandemic, a lot of companies had globally distributed teams, right? So I was working with like engineers from 6 locations back at the days of Groupon, but now it becomes more and more predominant. And even if you are close to office, you don't necessarily go to the office all the time to hang out with your team. So would love for some of you to share your experience in the fully remote setting. What do you do differently to make sure the team is engaged, make sure the team is happy and having that feeling of safety? So let's start with Nayeli here.
Yeah, I mean, it's really difficult. I don't know if you guys can see, but we're actually really coming back into the office, and there's tons of people kind of roaming around, which is really awesome. And I agree. Our company, I think, had a pretty strong in-office culture before COVID. And so when COVID hit, it really did change things up for us. We were used to really whiteboarding ideas. I forgot, I think it was Adam that was saying that, you know, just sharing kind of where you are in terms of progress, like touch points here and there. Sometimes those are less formal. You're just going up to people and asking them questions and kind of asking them, hey, is this the right direction? And it gets really hard when you go from office to home and remote work. And so a lot of the things that we were doing as a team is we kind of just had this, we communicate through Slack. And so we just were honest with each other and said, let's bother each other. Like, don't, just because you're at home doesn't mean that you can't still, you know, create huddles. And I know Slack added like this huddle feature, which to be honest, I haven't used too heavily, but we will just call each other, like just call each other. And, you know, the teams that I think were more successful were those that, you know, we were not ashamed to just bother each other. I mean, it is good to concentrate, but it's hard to do things without others' input, I think. And so that's one thing we did. And the other thing, and I think probably it's a huge trend, which is using Miro as a tool for whiteboarding exercises and things like that, so that we're all engaged in this new whiteboarding experience. And to be honest, that actually stayed with us even when we're in person a lot of the time now, because it's a way to kind of have an electronic copy of what you're doing without having to kind of copy that. So those are kind of some of the things that we did to stay in touch.
I love Miro as well. Yeah, it's a great recommendation. And then
yes,
any thoughts you have on that, Charlie?
Yeah, I think like yourself, Nayeli, I think we're back in the office a significant amount as well, which is great. I definitely have a slight bias to being face to face. I don't know what it is. It's an energy thing. I think during the pandemic, sometimes being in back-to-back Zoom calls, or it was really draining, and you didn't quite get that, I think, that interpersonal boost, which is obviously not a scientific term at all, but there's definitely something in that face-to-face energy. And our office was really built pre-pandemic, funnily enough, with collaboration in mind. But fortunately, we are really hybrid first, if that makes sense. We're getting much bigger on async communication, which means that we don't always need to join a huddle or always join a big team update. We'll broadcast this information to people so that they can consume it in their own time. However, we do like to coordinate. And if we've got a workshop that we want to run, if we've got third parties coming in, interviews nowadays, we really like to plan them to be in face to face. So, of course, Miro is super useful for those occasions where we are wanting to be online collaborative. It also documents it quite quickly as well for us. But we do strike a balance, being hybrid first. And I would say if you haven't got all of those sorts of tools at your disposal, we're pretty lucky here. We've got quite a lot of these tools available to us. If you haven't got those sorts of tools at your disposal, focus on the communication styles, focus on what should be sync, what should be async, what could be face-to-face, and what could be only online. If you haven't quite got the equipment to facilitate really good hybrid workshops, then maybe going online is actually the best, most effective way to do that. There's tons of free tools out there that can support this kind of collaboration. I think that's my view on this sort of hybrid definitely a little bit biased to face-to-face.
Yeah. But I love what you mentioned is bringing it back to communication, right? That's the key, whether it's tools or anything that's facilitating your communication, but your attitude has to first be there, and knowing that no communication is too much. So that's great. And also talking just back at the happiness, safety, we often say product team is a team, right? Consisting of the product manager, the engineers, designer as well, but also a lot of times they don't really report to the same org. And I don't want to dismiss that fact. So each organization can set up their org differently. And then this could impact how you think about approaching the team, how you think about creating that safe space, how you think about communicating overall. Like I've been in organizations where design is set up like a centralized office. You don't get designer end to end. You need to first go through some approvals to make sure the product can get prioritized by the designer and you get assigned designer. But I've also been in, I think nowadays it's more, even though it's a matrix organization, you actually get a designer and the engineers to work with the PM throughout the process. So again, the way you approach it could be different in how do you establish that healthy team dynamics. So we'd like to get your take on that. Like what do you do different based on the organization setup? Adam, if you want to share your experience.
Yeah. I've worked in a couple of different ways with designers. I think most companies I've worked at, design has been paramount. It's been really key to the success of the business, and therefore being given a lot of focus, which is meaning people like where we hire enough designers for the teams. So that has always meant that I've had a designer quite often shared with other teams, but someone to work with consistently, the same person on the same topics. But I'd have to say in a growing business, that actually is rarely the case. In fact, you might be reliant on hiring people who are coming into the organization and are not. They might be focused on your team, but they're not actually aware of everything. In terms of the business is aiming to do, and also what the customer needs are. So I think the key is to actually just make them feel part of the team. Firstly, it's just going back to those principles we were talking at the start, and doing that by giving them as much information as you can, but also giving them, I think, especially with design, giving them some freedom to express their creativity. I find this is definitely another mistake, but temptation as being a PM and being really outcome focused is that it can be the antithesis of creativity sometimes. Is it trimming corners in order to deliver things, so to speak. But I really think the successful partnerships I've had with designers have actually been around letting them do their job to the fullest of their ability, and that sometimes grates against just getting things done, but it's a balance to be struck, and therefore you have that conversation if it needs to be had. But at the outset, it should be about enabling them to just do everything to the best of their ability.
Yeah, that's very well said. Again, it's even if they may not be reporting directly to you, it's the same managerial principle of context, not control, right? So
yeah,
it's great advice. So let's turn to some audience questions. I see a question from Harriet. Do you think there are actually benefits of not coming from a technical background? So this is back to what we mentioned earlier, advices to PM not coming from a technical background. I think both Charlie and Seda actually touched on that. There could be benefits with curiosity and other traits, right? So do either of you want to jump in and then elaborate more on the potentially maximizing your strengths, leveraging the benefits of not coming from a technical background?
Yeah, I would say you've pretty much nailed it there. I think a really great place to start if you're not coming from a technical background, beyond what we've said, being transparent about your position and coming to your stakeholders and your collaborators and people in your team from that position of authenticity. I think beyond that, work out exactly what your strengths are, because chances are you've been doing something else before product management. What transferable skills are there that you can bring over from, maybe it's a degree that you've done and actually you're an excellent written communicator, or perhaps you're an actor and you can actually deliver really amazing presentations with confidence. It's about really working out what transferable skills and strengths you've got from your background and using them to really get going on your product management career.
Yeah, that's great.
The one thing I'd add to that, regardless of whether you have a technical degree or not, sometimes it's a company and cultural fit as well, right? You may not, even though you may have the engineering background, you may have product management experience, just depends on how the relationship is set up between engineering and product. It could be different, right? Sometimes engineering is driving the product, right? And sometimes, like a company like VMware, I know sometimes the engineering is driving it, or it could be where, it's an actual collaborative relationship, or it could be where product is just giving engineering requirements and they go and do it. So it sometimes depends on, it's not just the background, but the company and the cultural fit make a big difference as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, again, not really one size fit all. And I see Eric from the audience also talking about transferable skills and then the refreshed perspective. So well said as well. Thank you, Eric. The next question comes from Brandy. We talked a lot about communication, right? So Brandy said the biggest challenge was dealing with very different communication styles between different team members. So how to make that work when you have a process and then you also have very different communication styles. Any of you want to jump into that?
I can jump. I just lost an AirPod. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think she needs a moment. So communication styles, I think, firstly, are important to establish with your team members. Hopefully, people should be able to tell you what they like. I remember, I have a distinct memory of someone once telling me that they wanted me to IM them every time that I was about to come over and interrupt them at their desk. It's a very particular style there, but I think it is important, but really around the idea of what are your goals? Your goal is to collaborate and get the most out of everyone's input, and I think recognizing who are the really vocal people who can sometimes be very dominant, and the people who perhaps are a bit quieter is actually I think really important part of the skill set to learn over time and sense that and be able to adjust your approach, because sometimes it might be about having one-to-one conversations with people, or at least smaller group conversations, as opposed to really large groups where perhaps those quieter voices don't get heard as much. And I've always found that that's actually just one aspect, but is something that's really important to be aware of.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, Nayeli, you're back.
Yes, I lost an AirPod. It just like popped out. Sorry about that. And I agree obviously with Adam, and I think something I like to do when I get started with teams is be open about like my particular communication style, because that can sometimes get the conversation going. Like, here's my vulnerability. Like, I am a visual learner, so the way I can get through things more quickly is by like drawing things out or seeing a picture of what we're talking about. If you're just talking at me, sometimes it's really hard for me to like grasp the concepts. And so, I open up with that. I'm not perfect. I need visual cues. And does anyone else have something that they also prefer? And that's when people can kind of give you their points of view. And you'll see out there a lot of engineers love visual cues anyway. So it turns out we can all kind of rally around the fact that maybe we need this particular style of communication. And so, yeah, it's been something that I like to open up with to just get everyone talking.
Yeah, I think both of you touched on that empathy that product managers should have. It's not just for the users, but also for the team members as well. Is there anything either of you want to add to this as well, Charlie or Siddha?
Are we racing to unmute? Sorry. No, I think, yeah, just really highlighting the empathy role there. You know, it's about understanding and collaborating with your team members. You know, we often talk about how we are in the middle of the business, technology, and the customers, the users' experience. It's really about that empathy and understanding all of the different requirements and being able to communicate, compromise, and being able to communicate through those challenges.
Yeah, makes total sense. There is actually a specific question for you, Charlie. So that's from Richard. Please, can you tell us a little bit more about the tribes model that you've adopted? Any benefits you see? Any challenges you see?
Yeah. Hi, Richard. Thank you for the question. We transitioned to a tribe model to try and solve quite a significant challenge of dependencies that we had in our business, which every business has. And shockingly, we didn't solve it 100%. Obviously, every different model of working has its challenges and dependencies, particularly in a business that has been around for a while. Dojo's been around in another form called Payment Sense for very close to a decade, I think just over actually. You know, resolving those dependencies has been partially successful through this tribe model, because what we attempted to do, and we haven't done it perfectly, because I honestly don't believe there is any perfect organizational model. There's lots of different challenges with lots of different styles. We've created really distinct business units with specific business functions. And in payments, we're all about core payments excellence. But we have other tribes that are a bit more focused on a labs-esque experimentation, new products sort of vibe. A learning for us was that actually in this payments tribe, experimentation has a massive role. Discovery has a massive role for us. And actually, our mission to be successful in our mission, we need to have all of those roles as well. I would say other learnings really are you cannot communicate enough. In this tribe model, we really have, you know, it's totally cross-functional. We've really tried to make it completely cross-functional. We've got product engineering, marketing, customer experience, design, data, all in all of these self-contained tribes. And all of these people have come from functional teams before. And what we did see in the early stages was a little bit of misalignment. And, you know, everyone is rallying around overarching vision, but people are moving at different paces. The tribes are different sizes. The tribes have different skill sets, contexts, experiences. So actually communicating through these challenges was something we really needed to up the ante on quite quickly, because we reorganized close to 1,000 people all at the same time, which is very ambitious and slightly painful to begin with. But we're really hitting the ground running now. I'd say about 4 months later, we're really reaping the rewards here. It's not a model that I think would work for every company. I think you've really got to focus on the organizational structure that works for you and what you're trying to do as a company, and what your vision is. Don't just do tribes because Spotify did them once and released that great video that everybody's seen about tribes. Do it because it helps the company to achieve successful customer outcomes relating to the company's vision. That's what I'd say. I hope that answers your question, Richard.
Yeah, it's a great advice. And these are all really awesome questions. So please keep them coming, everyone. And then, so going back to, again, the changes that have come the last 2 years, right? So remote, we talk about it, but also it's also nowadays very common to have very high turnover on a team. And usually a pod or a squad you have is not so big, right? It could be 5 people, could be 10 people, could be more, but just losing one person or having a new team member, that is a pretty big impact. So would love to get all your perspective on what do you do when a turnover happens to really minimize the negative impact on the team, also on the deliverables. And also when a new member starts, what do you do as a PM to help them get up to speed and establish that rapport? So let's start with Siddharth.
Wonderful. I can unmute myself now. Apologies for that. I have to restart. Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, I am a product of the Great Resignation as well. So I've sort of gone through that experience, and obviously we see a lot of teams nowadays having to deal with high turnover. I think some of the tips that have already been mentioned around communication and managing expectations, I think that is the key, right? Being able to, present to the leadership team what's the impact of this person or these people leaving. How does it impact our projects in terms of how does it impact our ARR? How does it impact, maybe if some projects are on gross margin, how does it impact revenue protection projects and so on? So it's being able to communicate that and set the right expectations, right? If you lose, say, your senior architect or you lose your senior programmer, you know that that is something that will affect the team's productiveness, because they're not just operating as an individual contributor at that point in time, right? They are actually helping other people grow, especially if an engineer,
Right.
senior engineer leaves. So it's being able to communicate that impact, letting everyone know what the expectations are of what that would have, what impact that could have. In terms of new people coming in, especially as organizations have scaled up, I think a lot of us in companies that are scaling up right now, just having documentation in place, I think that makes a big difference. Having the right knowledge transfer videos, so at least when somebody new comes up, you can give them that, and then they can get started. Because as we grow, it's not possible for each one of us to spend an equal amount of time with new people who join, which maybe we could have done when we were maybe 5 to 10 people. So having the right documentation, making sure that they are being included, making sure that some of the tips that we shared earlier, they can understand the company vision, where we are going, what's the target state, so they don't feel like they're just a cog in the wheel. I think that's really important, that people understand how their work is going to impact the broader company outlook.
Yeah, that's makes total sense. So I think sometimes, despite really the best effort, we could have a heated debate within a team regarding certain solutions or regarding certain problems, right? And sometimes the product may not be going to the right direction that you were hoping for. Of course, the relationships are tested even more during these times of debates or challenges or setbacks. So would like to get all your opinion also on how do you deal with that situation? How do you deal with the conflicts or setbacks? Let's start with Charlie here.
Yeah, I would say conflicts always happen, and conflicts are actually healthy, and it's happy. I think we should be happy if there's a little bit of healthy conflict. You can definitely have a really good set of soft skills to be able to manage that conflict. You want to be looking at nonviolent communication. You want to be making sure that you've got a culture of feedback and transparency. And really, one of the most popular frameworks, radical candor, making sure that people are able to give feedback during a time of conflict or disagreement in a direct and sincere and caring way. One of the most effective things I've learned in the last couple of years is asking people to disagree and commit. And I think that allows people the space to disagree, make their views known about what the direction that a decision could go, but it's also facilitating a decision to be made. And if person X disagreed and committed, and later they were proven actually correct, we shouldn't have done Y or we shouldn't have done Z, that's a learning experience for everyone involved in that process. But facilitating that disagreement and committal is super important as a principle. Otherwise you can get quite stuck, and it can become higher stakes, and it can become even more difficult to communicate with sincerity and in a direct way if you actually cannot get past these roadblocks. So those few principles, I would say, are the most important, really, going through the motions of resolving conflict, which ultimately is a good thing, but you can handle it in good ways and bad ways and very bad ways.
Yeah. I love what you mentioned about promoting that healthy tension, because if you always agree, it's actually a really bad thing or sign here. So yeah, Siddha, if you want to share, I know you have some experience or examples you'd like to share as well.
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned, I think agreed conflict is healthy. It's, having providing people with that safety space. I think that's really important so they can express their views and how they feel. For me, when it comes to conflicts, I have a framework that I like to stick to. Essentially, being able to show empathy, right? Understand where the other person's coming from. I think that's really, really important, and truly get into their shoes and understand why they are so passionate or why do they think about this problem in a certain way. Then use data to prove your point or what you want to get across. Like there's so many, if you're solving a problem, there must be some amount of data that is helping you guide your decision. So use data, and finally, use a shared vision to get everyone together, right? For us, we have a shared vision for the company. We want to help our customers across decarbonization, around affordability, around electrification, and helping them grow. So that's our shared vision. So sort of using this framework to align everyone, because sometimes teams and different orgs have different goals, but if you have a combined shared vision, you can use that to move the team forward and sort of help resolve the conflict.
Yeah, love the framework, like establishing the shared interest, shared vision here. And Adam, I know you mentioned you had experience having rocky start with certain team members as well. And how did you resolve that?
Yeah, I mean, I hopefully you have an environment where people feel safe to share when they're not satisfied, and that gets aired in retros, not normally, or in a really healthy team, just whenever it's felt. But I joined a team in a previous role where actually I wasn't really the center of the conflict, but essentially I care a lot about the team dynamic, the overall dynamic, because it affects the outcomes that the team delivering, and something wasn't quite right, and there was one person who was kind of really disengaged and doing their work, but basically just not caring about, or not showing that they cared, and I think to basically borrow from Siddharth, sitting down with that person and understanding a little bit about their problem meant that I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say this was always my job to do, but in this case I saw it as a problem and recognized there was something simple that we could actually do. And the problem was that there were actually some really dominant voices in the team that were drowning out this person, and I helped to really give them a voice. I found that they had some really important perspectives on the work, and that it was going to contribute to hitting our goals, and and that these dominant voices weren't always right. Now that is a very specific example, but I guess it felt great to be able to enable someone to transition from actually being disengaged to a more fully contributing team member. And I think yes, that means that they can get to understand the vision, but I think it's important to realize that there can be blockers to people even taking those steps in the first place. I mean, hopefully most organizations have some kind of Scrum Master or ops role where that they can facilitate those discussions as well. But if not, then I find that the PM often is the person who feels the need to really resolve it. And I think making the team care about the team is really important. So having pointing out, I don't think in this case the other team members were necessarily aware of exactly the fact that there was a big problem, and pointing it out was the start. So and that can be quite a difficult step to take, is just pointing out that there is a problem when things actually appear to be going okay. So yeah, it is hard though, because having that awareness when you're ultimately your job is to deliver on goals and targets is challenging. And I think that's part of the part of the job that I really enjoy is the extra stuff that comes with it.
Yeah, it's the awareness and then making a team care about team. It's awesome. I know we only have 1 minute left, so I'd like to invite everyone to share just like 1-2 sentences of parting wisdom with the audience. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I hope all of you did too. Let's start with you, Nayeli.
Yeah, sure. I think it's been clear the communication is really key throughout all of these problems. And I will say humility is something that I also think is, I have it, we haven't mentioned specifically, but I think coming from empathy also comes coming from humility and being able to really understand who you're working with and knowing that you don't know everything. I think someone else mentioned that, like, not coming from a place of I know everything, but more that I want to learn from everyone else and collaborate, I think are my takeaways for just a successful relationship with my collaborators.
Yeah, that's awesome. Charlie?
I mean, yeah, absolutely nailed it, Nayeli. I would say parting wisdom is to trust others' wisdom, really. It's everyone's got their own take, everyone's got their own context, and really to set yourself up, to set your team up for success is believing in that and listening with empathy. So yeah, that would be my main parting wisdom.
Nicely said. Adam?
What's left to say? No, I think I'd like to encourage people to see yourself as part of the team. You might be someone who is the role is a leadership role, but see yourself as part of the team and share the responsibility actually with others about building a strong team and the trust, because it's not purely your responsibility, albeit something that we end up often owning. Yeah.
Very nice. Yeah, Sita, I will let you have the last word here.
Cool. I mean, as everyone mentioned, hopefully we were able to get across how important empathy, communication, curiosity is across all of this. So keep those hats on when you're when you're interacting with engineering and design, and keep in mind there's no one size fits all. Each organization is different. You got to understand the context. So invest the time to understand the broader context, the culture, the company, and I'm confident that you'll be successful in your role.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you to everyone in the panel. Really love the conversation. Let's continue to build great products for the world.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much, everyone. That was a brilliant session. And thanks to everyone in the chat as well. Please do keep in mind, everyone, you can connect to all the panelists on LinkedIn. Feel free to do so. You can also continue the conversation, of course, in the PLA Slack community. I'll drop a little link in there for anyone that isn't already a member. But yeah, I mean, again, wonderful session, fantastic insights. Thanks so much for taking the time to be here and kind of share your thoughts and wisdom with everyone today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
We'll see you all in the next one. Thank you.